The night was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every sound louder. The wind moved through the dry fields, carrying the smell of dust and old crops. Inside the small farmhouse, the human farmer slept lightly, his shotgun leaning against the wooden wall. He lived alone on this faraway frontier world, and he had learned never to trust the silence. Raiders and thieves sometimes moved in the dark, and one mistake could cost him his life. That was when he heard it. A soft creak. A door hinge moving. A shadow slipping into the barn. His eyes opened at once. He reached for the gun, but instead of storming outside, he waited. Whoever had come, they thought the farm was easy prey. They were wrong. Inside the barn, the intruder moved carefully, almost like a ghost. She was small, thin, her clothes torn and dirty. Her skin carried a faint glow under the moonlight, something not human, something alien. Her eyes darted left and right as she reached for a sack of grain. Her hands shook. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. The farmer stepped forward from the shadows, the barrel of the shotgun aimed steady. "Put it down," he said, his voice cold. The girl froze, the sack of grain slipping from her fingers. It fell to the ground with a dull thud, spilling seeds across the dirt floor. Her breathing quickened, and for a moment it looked like she might run. But instead, she slowly raised her hands. I am sorry," she whispered, her voice rough, broken. "Please, and don't shoot." The farmer's eyes narrowed. He had seen many thieves before. Some were desperate, others dangerous. This one looked desperate, but there was something strange in the way she stood, like a cornered animal ready to fight if forced. "You came to steal my food," he said. "Why shouldn't I hand you over to the patrols?" Her lips trembled, but her eyes, bright and alien, met his without fear. "Because I have nothing," she said. "No home, no family, only hunger." She lowered her hand slowly and took a shaky step forward. "I can work. I can give you something in return." The farmer frowned. He expected begging, not bargaining. "What can you give me?" he asked. She swallowed hard. Her voice was almost too soft to hear, but every word carried weight. "I will work your fields by day, and I will warm you by night." For a moment the barn fell into silence. Only the sound of the wind through the wooden boards remained. The farmer studied her face. She was young, but her eyes carried an old kind of pain, the kind born from suffering and running for too long. He lowered the shotgun slightly but did not drop it. "That's a dangerous offer," he said slowly. Her chin lifted, stubborn and proud even in her weakness. "I don't care. If it keeps me alive, I'll do anything." The farmer sighed. Something in her words touched a part of him he had buried long ago. He lived alone because loneliness was safer. He kept his farm because it was easier than trusting anyone else. But this alien girl standing there in his barn, half-starved and trembling, made him pause. "Who are you running from?" he asked. Her eyes darkened and she shook her head quickly. "It doesn't matter. If I tell you, you'll throw me out." That answer made his blood run cold. He knew what it meant. Whoever she was running from was dangerous, more dangerous than raiders, maybe soldiers. Maybe worse, still he didn't push. "Not yet, fine," he said, lowering the gun fully. "You'll work. But no stealing. If you try again, I won't be so kind." The girl nodded quickly, relief flashing across her face. Her legs gave way for a moment and she leaned against the wall. He saw then how weak she truly was. Her ribs showed through her torn clothes. Her hands were cut and bruised. She looked like she had been walking for weeks without rest. He walked past her, picked up the spilled grain and tossed it back into the sack. "First thing in the morning," he said. "You'll start." She gave a small bow, her eyes shimmering in the faint light. "Thank you," she whispered. But as the farmer walked back to the farmhouse, a thought gnawed at the back of his mind. He had just allowed a stranger into his life. A starving alien girl with secrets in her eyes and danger at her back. Her words echoed in his head. "I'll work your fields by day and warm you by night." The offer was strange, desperate, and maybe foolish. But one thing was certain, his quiet. Lonely farm would never be the same again. And outside, beyond the hills, hidden shadows moved in the darkness. Someone was already searching for her. Morning light spread across the dry fields, painting the farm in shades of gold. The farmer stepped outside, his boots crunching against the dirt. For years, this place had been silent. Just him, the soil, and the endless fight against weeds and weather. But today was different. The alien girl stood at the edge of the field, her body still thin and weak, but her eyes awake and alert. She had not run during the night. though he had half expected her to vanish before dawn. Instead, she waited for him, her hands clasped together like she was afraid he might send her away. "You said you would work," the farmer said, his tone firm but not unkind. "So work." She nodded quickly, almost too eagerly, and stepped forward. The farmer handed her a hoe and pointed toward the dry rows where weeds had grown wild. Her hands shook slightly as she gripped the handle, but she forced herself into motion, pulling weeds from the soil, breaking up the hard ground. The farmer watched. She was clumsy at first, unused to the tool, but her movements grew steadier. Sweat glistened on her brow under the morning sun. She worked without complaint even when blisters formed on her palms. Hours passed and she did not stop. At noon, the farmer finally walked over, carrying a jug of water. "Drink," he said. She took it with both hands, gulping down the water as though she had never tasted anything so precious. When she finished, she looked at him with wide, grateful eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. The farmer said nothing. He simply turned back to his work, but inside he felt something stir. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken to him with such raw honesty. That evening, after the day's labor, they returned to the farmhouse. The girl's legs trembled from exhaustion, but her eyes carried a strange fire. She had proven herself in the field at least for one day. Inside, the farmer lit the old lantern, its soft glow filling the room. He cut bread and poured soup into a wooden bowl. Without hesitation, he pushed it toward her. She blinked in surprise. "For me? You earned it," he said simply. She ate quickly, almost desperately, but then slowed as if realizing she should not appear greedy. Between bites, she studied him. "You live alone," she said softly. The farmer raised an eyebrow, and she lowered her gaze. "Most men do not. They keep family, or take others." "I'm not most men," he replied. His voice was rougher than he intended, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head, curiosity shining in her alien eyes. When the meal was done, silence filled the small room. The fire crackled. Outside, the night stretched across the horizon, bringing with it the familiar unease. The farmer leaned back in his chair, his shotgun resting nearby, always within reach. The girl shifted closer to the fire. For a moment, he noticed something strange. The faint glow of patterns on her skin, like delicate lines etched into her arms. They shimmered only in the dim light, vanishing when the flames grew brighter. He frowned. "What is that?" She froze, pulling her sleeves down quickly. "Nothing," she whispered. "Just scars, but they did not look like scars. They looked like markings, glowing softly, alive with some hidden power." The farmer said nothing more, but his suspicion grew. Whoever she was, she carried secrets far heavier than hunger. Later, when the fire burned low, she lay down on the old rug near the hearth. The farmer had offered her a blanket, but nothing more. She curled up quietly, her eyes watching the flames. Before drifting into sleep, she spoke in a low voice. "Thank you for not giving me to the patrols." The farmer, sitting in his chair, gave no reply. He only stared into the fire, his jaw tight. He wasn't sure if he had made the right choice. But deep down, he already knew this bargain would change everything. In the middle of the night, he awoke to the sound of movement. His hand went instantly to the shotgun, but it was only the girl. She had risen, standing by the window, her silhouette framed by the pale moonlight. Her shoulders shook. She was crying silently, though she tried to hide it. The farmer lowered the gun slowly. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Her glowing marks shimmered faintly again, like they were alive with her sorrow. Finally, she turned and saw him awake. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat she looked terrified, like a child caught in a crime. But he said nothing. She whispered one last thing before curling back under the blanket. "I will not run. Even if they find me, I will not run." The farmer lay back down. But sleep did not return easily. He wondered what they meant. And somewhere, far beyond his quiet farm, someone else stirred in the darkness, following a trail, closing. The days passed slowly on the farm, but for the first time in years, the farmer did not feel completely alone. The alien girl worked hard from sunrise to sunset, her small frame moving through the dry rows with surprising strength. She carried water buckets, chopped weeds, even repaired broken fences. She never complained, not once. But at night, when the fire burned low and silence filled the farmhouse, the farmer noticed how she always seemed restless. Her eyes never fully closed in sleep. Sometimes she would sit up suddenly, breathing hard like she had been chased even in her dreams. One evening, the farmer found her sitting outside near the field. The stars stretched across the black sky, thousands of lights twinkling in silence. She hugged her knees tightly, staring upward, her glowing skin faint in the moonlight. "You should rest," the farmer said, stepping closer. She didn't look at him. Her voice was quiet, almost trembling. "I can't. The silence makes me remember." The farmer crossed his arms, waiting. He knew she had been keeping secrets. He had not forced her to speak, but he also knew that whatever haunted her might soon come for his farm. Finally, she turned her head, her alien eyes shimmering. "You should not have taken me in. Why?" he asked calmly. "Because the ones who hunt me, they will find me," she said. "And when they do, they will burn everything to ash. Even you," the farmer's jaw tightened. He had lived with danger before. Raiders, storms, wild beasts. But there was something in her tone that felt heavier, darker. "Who are they?" he asked. Her shoulders trembled. She hugged herself tighter. "The warlord's men." That name fell like a stone between them. The farmer knew of the warlord. Everyone in the outer settlements did. He was no ordinary bandit leader. He was cruel, powerful, and merciless, ruling a broken corner of space with iron chains. Farmers paid him tribute to keep their land safe. Merchants gave bribes to pass through his territory. Those who defied him disappeared, and now this girl claimed to be hunted by him. The farmer narrowed his eyes. "What were you to him?" For a long moment she said nothing. Her eyes filled with tears that she refused to let fall. Then, with a shaky breath, she whispered, "Property." The farmer stiffened. He had expected many answers, but not that. She continued, her voice cracking. "I was taken when I was young. Too young to fight. He branded me as his servant. I cooked his food, carried his blades, cleaned his halls. To him I was nothing. Less than nothing." She paused, her hands digging into the dirt as if the memories were too sharp to bear. "But I watched. I learned. And one night I escaped." The farmer studied her, his heart heavy though he tried to keep his voice steady. "Escaped how?" Her lips trembled. "I ran when he slept. I ran until my feet bled, until the stars changed above me. I thought, maybe I could vanish in the emptiness. But his hunters never stop. They can smell weakness. They can smell fear." She looked up at him then, her eyes blazing in the dark. "If they find me here, they will kill you. They will burn your fields, your home, your life. That is why I said you should have thrown me out." The farmer was silent for a long time. His farm was all he had. Every fence post, every seed planted, every stone laid, his life's work. To lose it to some warlord's rage would destroy him, and yet as he looked at the trembling girl before him, he felt something stir deep inside. "You ran," he said slowly. "That takes strength. That takes courage." She shook her head. "It takes desperation. Courage would have been to fight." "Survival is its own kind of courage," the farmer replied, his voice steady. For the first time, she looked at him with something like hope. The silence stretched, broken only by the sound of the wind in the fields. Then suddenly she grabbed his hand. Her grip was small but fierce. "If you let me stay, I will not run again. Not this time. Even if they come, even if death waits, I will stand. But I cannot do it alone." The farmer's eyes met hers. There was no lie in them. Only fire and fear tangled together. He nodded once. "Then you will not be alone." Her lips parted as if she couldn't believe his words. Slowly, a tear slid down her cheek, glowing faintly as it caught the moonlight. The farmer pulled his hand away gently and stood. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow will be another long day." She nodded, wiping her face quickly, trying to hide her weakness. But as she lay near the fire later that night, her whispered words floated through the quiet room. "Thank you." The farmer pretended not to hear. But deep down, he knew his life had already changed. And far beyond the horizon, in the dark corners of space, the warlord's hunters moved closer, following a faint trail. The storm she feared was not far behind. The morning sun rose red, casting long shadows across the fields. The farmer moved through the rows, checking fences, his old shotgun slung across his back. The alien girl worked beside him, her hands quick as she tied broken wires and pulled weeds. From a distance, it looked like an ordinary day. But both of them felt it, the heavy silence, the strange stillness that pressed down on the land. The farmer's dog growled low at the edge of the barn. The air carried a different scent, sharp and burning. The farmer froze. He had smelled it before, smoke mixed with iron and oil. Raiders. Inside, he ordered. The girl looked up, confusion in her bright alien eyes. What is it? They're coming. Before she could answer, the sound of engines filled the air. Dark shapes appeared at the horizon, kicking up trails of dust. The farmer counted at least 6 vehicles, spiked, rusted machines built for war, each carrying armed men. The warlord's hunters had found them. The farmer's heart pounded. His farm was no fortress, just wood, soil, and sweat. Against raiders, it was nothing. He pulled the girl toward the farmhouse. "Stay behind me." But she stopped, her glowing marks faintly sparking under her skin. Her face hardened. "No, if we run, they will chase. If we hide, they will burn this place. We stand." The farmer stared at her. For a moment, she looked nothing like the starving thief he had first caught. She looked like someone who had run too long and finally decided not to run anymore. The raiders roared closer, their engines screaming. Bullets rattled into the wooden fence, splinters flying. The farmer crouched behind a cart, shotgun ready. His hands shook. He had defended his farm from small gangs before, but never this many. Then the girl moved. She sprinted into the open field, her body glowing brighter under the burning sun. The raiders laughed at the sight of her, raising their weapons. But before they could fire, she grabbed a heavy farming tool, swung it with a strength no human could match, and smashed it against the first vehicle's front wheel. The machine flipped, crashing into the dirt. Raiders spilled out, cursing, but she was already on them. Her fists struck like iron, her movements sharp and fast. She fought like someone who had been trained by cruelty itself. The farmer's eyes widened. He had never seen anything like it. One raider rushed him, firing wildly. The farmer ducked behind the cart, aimed carefully, and fired his shotgun. The blast threw the man backward. Smoke filled his lungs, ears ringing, but he stayed standing. The girl leapt into the second vehicle, yanking the driver out and slamming him into the dirt. Sparks flashed along the glowing lines on her arms. The farmer realized they weren't scars, they were something else. Something alive. Energy pulsed through them with every strike. But the raiders were too many. Gunfire tore through the barn wall, setting hay ablaze. Flames spread quickly, black smoke curling into the sky. "Fall back," the farmer shouted. The girl ignored him, ripping a blade from one of the raiders and spinning it in her hands. She moved like a storm, cutting through the attackers, every motion fueled by rage and desperation. But then a bullet grazed her shoulder, making her stumble. The farmer rushed forward, blasting another raider away, then dragged her back toward the house. "You'll get yourself killed," he growled. Her alien eyes burned with fire. Better to die fighting than chained again. The farmer gritted his teeth. He understood. He hated it, but he understood. The raiders regrouped, circling the farmhouse. Their leader, a tall man with scars across his face, stepped forward. His voice carried like thunder. "Give us the girl, farmer, and we'll spare your land." The farmer raised his shotgun, his voice steady. "Over my dead body," the leader grinned. So be it, the fight raged again. Bullets shattered windows. Flames climbed higher. The girl fought beside the farmer, their backs pressed together. She moved with unnatural speed, he with stubborn grit. Together they struck, defended, and endured. By the time the sun dipped low, half the raiders lay broken in the dirt, their machines burning wrecks. The survivors fled, dragging their wounded away, swearing revenge. The field smoldered, blackened patches marking where fire had touched the earth. The barn was half gone, smoke rising into the darkening sky. The farmer leaned against the fence, his body trembling from exhaustion. His shotgun was empty, his ears still ringing. The girl stood beside him, blood on her arm, her glowing marks dimming as her strength faded. But her eyes were alive, burning with something fierce. "You see now," she said, her voice rough but steady. "They will not stop. The warlord will come himself if he must." The farmer looked at his ruined fields, at the broken barn he had built with his own hands. His heart ached. But when his gaze returned to the girl, he knew his choice. "We'll be ready," he said. She stared at him, shocked, then slowly nodded. For the first time, she allowed herself a small, tired smile. The farm still stood, scarred but alive. And so did they. But in the distance, under the blood-red sunset, smoke rose from other farms. The warlord's shadow was spreading wider. And this battle was only the beginning. Smoke still clung to the air long after the battle was over. The barn was half burned, its roof fallen in. Blackened patches scarred the once quiet fields. The farmer sat on the porch, his shotgun across his knees, staring at the destruction. For years he had kept this land safe, working in silence. Now it was broken, and the quiet was gone forever. Inside the farmhouse, the alien girl sat near the fire, clutching her wounded arm. Blood had dried against her skin, but she had refused to cry. Her glowing marks pulsed faintly, weak but steady. She had fought like fire itself, but now her body trembled from exhaustion. The farmer finally stood, walking back inside. His boots were heavy, his heart heavier. He poured water into a bowl and brought clean cloth. Without a word, he crouched beside her and began cleaning her wound. She flinched at first, but then let him work. His rough hands were surprisingly gentle. He tied the cloth tight, stopping the bleeding. "You should have stayed behind," he muttered. Her alien eyes lifted to his, sharp but tired. "If I had stayed behind, you would be dead." The farmer didn't argue. He knew she was right. He had fought raiders before, but never so many, never so ruthless. Alone, he would not have survived. They sat in silence for a long time. Only the crackle of the fire filled the room. Finally, she spoke, her voice low. "You should leave this place, before it's too late." The farmer leaned back, shaking his head. "This farm is my life. I built every wall, planted every seed. I won't abandon it." Her hands tightened around the blanket draped over her shoulders. "Then you will die here. The warlord's men will return, stronger than before. They always return." He studied her face. Fear lived in her eyes, but something else too. A flicker of hope. A longing for something she didn't dare ask for. "Then we fight," he said simply. Her lips parted in shock. She shook her head quickly. "You don't understand. He is not just a man. He is a shadow that swallows everything. His men, his weapons, his rage. No one stands against him and lives." The farmer's gaze hardened. Maybe no one has tried hard enough. She stared at him, silent, as if weighing his words. For the first time, she saw not just a lonely farmer, but a man carved from stubborn stone. The next days were filled with quiet work. Together, they repaired the fences, cleared the burned patches, and buried the raiders who had fallen. The girl worked beside him despite her injury, refusing to rest. He noticed how quickly she learned, how she could carry twice her weight, how her alien instincts guided her hands in ways human farmers never knew. At night, they sat by the fire, speaking little at first. But slowly words came. The farmer told her about the seasons, how the soil changed with the stars. She listened closely as though each word was a gift. In return, she showed him alien tricks, how to set simple traps from wire and wood, how to sense when danger was nearby, listening to the earth. Sometimes, when the fire grew low, her laughter slipped out. It was small, quick, like she had forgotten how, but it was real. One evening, as they shared bread and stew, the farmer caught her staring. Her gaze lingered, soft but intense. When he raised an eyebrow, she quickly looked away, cheeks flushed a faint glow. "You don't trust me," she said quietly. The farmer leaned back, arms crossed. "Not yet." Her fingers tightened on the wooden bowl. "I don't blame you. I was a thief when you found me. I would not trust me either." He studied her in silence. Then he said, "But you stayed. You fought. That means something." Her eyes lifted slowly, shimmering with something fragile, something like hope. That night, as the fire burned low, the girl curled under her blanket near the hearth. But before sleep claimed her, she whispered into the quiet room. "When I was with him, the warlord, I prayed for someone to see me as more than a tool. Just once, you don't look at me like he did." The farmer sat in his chair, pretending to be half asleep, but her words cut through him. He didn't reply, but his hand rested near his shotgun, fingers tense. Not because of her, because of the storm he knew was coming. Outside, the wind carried faint sounds, distant, almost too far to hear. The farmer's eyes snapped open. He had lived too long on the edge not to know that sound. Engines. The girl stirred in her sleep, restless, her glowing marks flickering faintly. Even in dreams she felt it, the shadow that never stopped hunting. The fragile trust between them had begun to grow, like the first green shoot pushing through dry soil. But trust alone would not stop what was coming. The warlord's shadow was moving closer, and soon their fragile bond would be tested by fire again. The days grew heavier after the raid. The farmer and the girl worked in silence, their hands busy with repairs but their minds heavy with fear. Every sound of wind in the distance made the farmer's grip tighten on his shotgun. Every shadow across the horizon made the girl's glowing marks tremble faintly under her skin. They both knew it. This calm would not last. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, the farmer spotted smoke rising from the far hills. Not the smoke of cooking fires, but the thick, black columns of burning homes. He clenched his jaw. Neighbors were fleeing, abandoning their land, their animals, their lives. "They're moving closer," he muttered. The girl stood beside him, her face pale, her eyes locked on the distant flames. Her lips parted as though to speak, but no words came. She only hugged herself tightly, her body trembling. That night, when the fire was low and the farmhouse quiet, the farmer sat sharpening his old hunting knife. The girl sat across from him, staring into the flames. Finally, her voice broke the silence. "You need to know the truth," she whispered. The farmer lifted his eyes. "The truth?" She nodded slowly, her hands shaking as she pulled back the sleeve of her arm. The glowing lines on her skin pulsed brighter, weaving strange patterns that looked almost like a brand. "This mark is not just a scar," she said. "It is a claim." The farmer frowned, his hand tightening around the knife handle. "Claim?" Her voice cracked, but she forced the words out. "I was not only his servant. I was chosen, marked, promised as his bride." The knife slipped in the farmer's hand, clattering against the table. He stared at her, shock burning in his chest. "Bride?" She nodded, tears brimming in her alien eyes. "He took me when I was young. Said one day when I was grown I would stand beside him, chained forever. The mark binds me to him like property, like ownership. To him I am not a person. I am a prize." The farmer's stomach twisted. Rage filled his veins like fire. He thought of the raiders, of the flames on the fields, of the girl standing in his barn the night she begged for a chance to live. And now he understood. She had not only been running from slavery, she had been running from a cage dressed as a crown. "Why didn't you tell me before?" he asked, his voice low and harsh. "Because you would have thrown me out," she said, tears slipping down her cheeks. "No one stands against him. Anyone who tries is destroyed. I thought if I stayed quiet, if I worked hard, maybe I could have a little life before he found me again. But after the raid I knew he will not stop. Not until I'm back in his hands." The farmer stared at her, his chest heavy with anger and something else, something he couldn't name. He set the knife down slowly. "So if he comes, he won't just kill me. He'll take you back." She bowed her head, whispering, "Yes." Silence filled the farmhouse. The fire popped, the old wood creaked. Outside, the wind carried the faint growl of engines again, distant but steady like a warning drumbeat. The farmer leaned forward, his voice firm. "Listen to me. I don't care who he is. Warlord, King, Shadow, whatever he calls himself. He doesn't own you. Not while I stand." Her eyes widened, shimmering in the firelight. "You don't understand. He will come himself. His soldiers are nothing compared to him. He is cruel, merciless. I have seen what he does to those who defy him. He breaks them, slowly." The farmer's jaw tightened. "Then let him try." For the first time, the girl's tears fell freely. She covered her face, shaking with silent sobs. He didn't move closer, didn't touch her. He only sat there watching the flames dance, his own rage simmering. Hours passed before the girl's breathing calmed. She wiped her face and looked at him again, her voice barely a whisper. "If you stand with me, he will destroy you too." The farmer met her gaze steadily. "If I don't, he destroys you. I won't live with that." Her lips trembled. Slowly, she reached across the table, her small hand brushing his rough, scarred one. For a moment, neither spoke. The bond between them was fragile, but it was no longer just about survival. It was about choice. Outside, thunder rolled, not from the sky but from engines growing louder in the distance. The warlord's shadow was no longer far. It was here, spreading across the land, swallowing everything in fire and fear, and soon it would fall on the farm. The ground shook under the weight of engines. Dust clouds rose at the horizon like a storm. The farmer stood on his porch, shotgun in hand, eyes sharp and unblinking. The alien girl stood beside him, her glowing marks brighter than ever, her face pale but resolute. "They're here," the farmer said quietly. The girl nodded, her lips pressed tight. "And he is with them." The roar of machines grew until the farm trembled. Then, out of the dust, the warlord's convoy appeared. Towering vehicles armed with spikes and guns, a moving wall of death. At the center, a massive black machine stopped. Its doors opened and a figure stepped out. The warlord. He was taller than any man, his body wrapped in armor dark as night. His face was hidden behind a mask carved with cruel lines, but his voice carried like thunder. "Farmer," he called. "You have something that belongs to me. Give her back and I will let you die quickly." The girl stiffened, fear flashing in her eyes, but she stood her ground. "I do not belong to you," she shouted, her voice cracking but fierce. The warlord laughed, a sound that chilled the air. "You bear my mark. You are mine by law, by blood, by chains. No dirt-eating human can change that." The farmer stepped forward, his shotgun raised. His voice was steady, hard as stone. "She's not yours. Not anymore." The warlord tilted his head. "Then you will die with her." With a wave of his hand, his raiders charged. Engines screamed, guns fired. The farmhouse exploded into splinters as bullets tore through its walls. The farmer dove behind the well, firing back. His shotgun roared, dropping raiders one by one, but the tide kept coming. The girl leapt into the fray, her glowing marks blazing like fire. She grabbed a heavy blade from a fallen raider and spun with deadly speed. Every strike was fueled by years of rage, every blow a piece of her freedom clawed back. Together, they fought back-to-back, human grit and alien fury. The farmer fired until his shotgun clicked empty, then swung it like a club. The girl moved like a storm, cutting through raiders, her glowing skin lighting the battlefield. Smoke and fire filled the air, turning the farm into a battlefield of survival. But then, the warlord himself moved. He stepped forward, each footfall shaking the ground. Raiders cleared a path as he drew a massive blade, black and cruel. His voice boomed, "Enough games. She comes with me." The girl froze for a moment, fear locking her limbs. The sight of him dragged her back into chains, into the dark halls where she had been nothing but property. The farmer saw her falter. He stepped in front of her, shotgun raised though it was empty. His voice was steady. "You'll have to take her over my dead body." The warlord's laugh echoed. Gladly he swung his blade. The farmer barely dodged, the strike carving a crater into the ground. The farmer slashed with his knife, sparks flying off the warlord's armor. He fought with everything he had, but the warlord was too strong, too fast. The girl's eyes blazed. She remembered her promise, "I will not run again." She charged forward, her glowing marks pulsing like fire. Energy surged through her veins, brighter than ever before. She slammed into the warlord, her blade striking with unnatural force. The warlord staggered, roaring in rage. His mask cracked, revealing cruel eyes burning with fury. "You dare defy me?" he bellowed. "I am not yours." She screamed, her blade slicing again. The farmer joined her, slashing with his knife, aiming for the cracks in the armor. Blow after blow, together they pressed him back. The warlord fought like a beast, but for the first time he faltered. Finally, the girl's glowing blade pierced his chest. Light exploded from the wound, the energy of her mark burning against his flesh. The warlord roared one last time, then fell, his massive body crashing into the dirt. Silence fell. The raiders, seeing their master defeated, scattered into the distance, engines roaring as they fled. The battlefield grew quiet again, save for the crackle of dying flames. The farmer dropped to his knees, breathing hard. His clothes were torn, his body bruised, but he was alive. The girl stood over the warlord's fallen body, her blade shaking in her hands. Then she dropped it, her knees giving way. She turned to the farmer, tears shining in her alien eyes. You stood for me," she whispered. He looked at her, tired but steady. "You gave me a reason to." Slowly she crawled to his side, resting her head against his shoulder. Her glowing marks dimmed, settling into a soft light. "You gave me more than a reason," she whispered. "You gave me freedom." The farmer wrapped his arm around her shoulders, holding her close. Together they sat in the ruins of the farm, battered but unbroken. By day she had worked his fields. By night she had kept him warm by the fire. But now she was more than a bargain. She was his partner, his equal, his future. And as dawn rose again, painting the sky with new light, the farm stood scarred but alive. So did they.